Welcome back to another exciting edition of the Pointless Exercise podcast. It's Thursday, and we're going to talk to our friend Tom Loxas about the Cubs and the Bears and whatever else comes up. Tom, how are you doing?
Hey, good, man.
Are you excited that Sammy Sosa is in Mesa, imparting all of his wisdom?
Yeah,
to
it's like
to all the young Cubs.
Yeah, I heard he actually gave Vidal Braun. Was that how you say his last name?
Brujan.
Yeah, I forget. Anyway, he gave him a hitting tip, and then Brujan hit a home run on the next at bat. So
yeah. He
is. Watch out, Craig Counsell.
Who knew that Sammy should have been the hitting coach all these years? He got asked if he would consider. He's only doing this for a week, and he got asked if he would consider becoming a full-time coach. And Sammy took it very seriously. Well, we'll see what happens this week, and then anything can happen. It's like, yeah, I'm sure that's what you want to do now in your retirement with your $100 and some million sitting in the bank is come and be a Major League Baseball coach. But that's fine.
Yeah.
I was really surprised that he was there. I
didn't know that was part of the deal.
I didn't know, and apparently it was a surprise to, like, not that he was coming, but his flight got delayed, or he's just Sammy, he just showed up late because he was used to it.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden he's just there. Like, the Marquee camera's like, shit, Sammy's in the dugout. So they just started shooting him, and then Taylor grabbed him and, is your dad here? Can I interview him? No. Well, I have to interview you then. And because I just look up and I'm like, holy shit, that's Sammy. Why is he there? I just thought the Ricketts, it's funny, they went from you're persona non grata, we don't want you doing anything, to come on, you want to be a guest instructor at spring training? Come on down. It's like, you guys didn't have to do that. But that's fine. It's fun. I wonder how much of it though is, I think they were legitimately surprised when he came to the convention at like how excited the players were to meet him. And maybe that was why they're like, well, we'll bring him in. What harm can he do in a week? Like I said to you right before we started, I'm like, I hope they send him out to do some outfield drills so he can teach all the guys how to overthrow the cutoff man by 40 feet. No, this is when you show off your arm. No, throw it to second base, please.
I'm old enough to remember, though. Remember when he was a pretty damn good right fielder before he got like really huge?
Yeah. That
like totally changed him as an outfielder, I thought.
Yeah, he always was. His only problem when young Sammy in right field was that he thought he could throw everybody out.
Oh, totally.
So his
throws would go.
There was no strategy to his throws other than I'm sure I can get him. And it's just halfway up the screen. It's like, but yeah, he covered a lot of ground. He was I'm sure he was. I don't know. We didn't have baseball savant at the time.
Yeah.
But other than he led the league in
simpler
errors.
Times.
He led the league in errors. He had 14 errors one year.
Wow, that's a lot for an outfielder, yeah.
And then my favorite stat of all time was his last full year with the White Sox. He is still the only player in baseball history. This was history to have double-digit totals in doubles, triples, homers, stolen bases, caught stealing, and errors.
Wow. Yeah,
the only outfielder, I think. The only outfielder to ever do that. Yes. He was a 7-tool player. And 2 of them you would only use for demolition. You wouldn't use to actually build anything. It was fun. That's why I was always a huge Sammy fan. I prefaced that. I've talked about it on the pod before. I had a lot of friends when I went to Northern who were White Sox fans. And so I loved making fun of Sammy. But I only got to make fun of him for a semester because second semester of my freshman year, he got traded to the Cubs. And I suddenly had to become like the greatest Sammy Sosa defender of all time. Because I was now getting all the crap for having the wild, idiot on my team. And I was just so glad to see him. First, he turned into a good player before he became like the superstar.
Oh, yeah.
Donahue and I just talked about, because we just did right fielders. I don't remember this crap. Wait, was it 96? He breaks his hand after 124 games. He already had 40 homers.
Yeah.
I mean, that's he hadn't blown up yet, literally.
Yeah, no, we can't pinpoint exactly when he started, messing around with that stuff, but I still think that it happened after that year. That was my philosophy. And I always thought that, that player that he was turning into at that point was a damn good player.
Yeah.
Was that the year, though, that he stole the 30th base for like
that was earlier. That was 93, I think. Because he did it twice.
Okay, yeah. Was that?
But when he became the first Cub, that was Santo bitching the whole for weeks about Sammy stealing bases when he didn't hit.
Yeah.
It's like,
he stole third
Ron,
base.
you're the only guy here who thinks they're still in the playoff hunt. They're not. Just let him run. Who cares? He's not. If he costs him a game, it's not going to matter. Just let him go.
And I still remember when he first got here, he was playing center field.
Yeah.
Center field and leading off.
And putting Andre Dawson's life in mortal danger by just blindly running into right center after fly balls. It's like, there's another guy there, Sammy. Oh, look out.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, so we ranked the right fielders. And we had, of all-time Cub right fielders, we had Sammy, spoiler alert, we had Sammy 1 and Andre 2. And of course, they were they played alongside each other for 2 years? Or just 1? 2, I think. Maybe 1. I knew it in that podcast. So just go listen to that podcast and I'll tell you the right answer. I've since forgotten.
Okay. Well, I mean, I have to think about that too. It's like, I think if Sammy, even if he didn't do the PEDs, I still think the longevity he had with the Cubs, I think he still would have been better than Dawson, don't you? I mean, because Dawson, by the time he came to us, he was, just at the end of his prime, right?
Yeah, he was, what did we decide, 31 when he came over?
Yeah.
He played more years in Montreal than he played. Yeah, and he was obviously great in 87. Yeah. And, after the injury struggles in 89, which came to a head, unfortunately, in the playoffs when he just kept making outs with runners on base, he was really good again the next year.
Yeah.
Playing on knees that there was no cartilage left. It was all, if he wasn't so tough, he would not have made it, but he did. Let's see. Sammy, 92 was the year he broke his foot. That was his first year with the Cubs. And in 93, he played both. A smart guy wouldn't have looked up Sammy. He would have looked up Andre, because we know when Sammy left. Because Andre went to the Red Sox in 93. So they just played 1 year together. That was enough for Andre. He's like, I gotta go. And then we were talking on the thing about how ironic it was. They would not have played together, but remember, Sammy signed with the Red Sox. Remember in the pseudo free agency after the strike? They got, and then now Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor ruled that they had to go back to the previous CBA. And so then the free agency, those guys were not free agents, so they just went back to their teams, and Sammy came back to the Cubs.
Yep.
So, nothing like me recapping another podcast that I just did 2 weeks ago. Why not? Speaking of guys who ought to be coaches, Justin Turner has been playing. I'm just kidding. He's been working out at third base.
Yeah, that's something.
Yeah, I think he's doing it on purpose. He wants them to see him play there a lot so that they don't ever put him there in a game. They're like, oh, we can't do that.
Yeah, Craig has to just be kind of looking to see, how.
Well, I think maybe even if it's just, can we put him there for a couple innings in Japan? We need to know now before we get over there.
That's true. Yeah, because I don't think Shaw's going to be available for Japan.
He's supposed to be. He's supposed to start actually playing in games with no restrictions this week.
All right, we'll see.
And that gives him 2.5 weeks to get ready, plus some of those games in Japan.
No, then he should be fine then.
Yeah, as long as he doesn't re-aggravate it, he should be okay. Nico has already been ruled out.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that could be part of it. Like, well, let's see if we can get away with an inning or two with Turner. Maybe late in the game we move Shaw over to second and we put Turner in. So it would be dumb, right, to not see if he could still pick up a ground ball at third, because you can decide pretty quickly that that we don't want him to do that. I thought it was funny when he was getting interviewed by the Chicago media, and one of them's like, you want to apologize to Cub fans for 2017? He's like, I'm pretty sure we played in the NLCS in 2016 and we lost, and they were all pretty happy then. So no, I'm not going to apologize for 2017. But it is funny, and it will be interesting to me to see how much more Craig trusts Michael Busch against left-handers this year than he did last year. I mean, he's got a much better option with Turner than he did with Wisdom.
Yeah.
And so I got to believe they think that Busch is going to play more against lefties than he did. But I'm sure there are certain types of lefties that they just as soon have Turner face.
I like the flexibility Turner's going to give them. Much rather would have Bregman, but I still like the move on its own.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a good signing. And honestly, if they were running the team like a real team, signing Bregman would not have precluded them from signing Turner.
Right.
Because the way that really should have worked was Bregman would have, pushed Shaw to the bench, not to Iowa. And then Shaw could have been the guy who can fill in at second, short, and third. And then whether it's Workman or Bruhan, one of them wouldn't have made the team, and you had Turner, and you basically had the same bench, the same positional abilities on your bench that you have now. Our old friend Alexander Canario cleared waivers. It's amazing how all of the guys Jed DFAs somehow clear waivers. It's almost like there's other teams don't want him. But Candelario does have a new home. They traded him to the Mets just hours after the Mets lost Nick Madrigal for months with a broken shoulder. Does make you wonder if maybe Nick is a little too small to actually be playing Major League Baseball. Things keep breaking on his body now. It's not a great sight.
The Cubs are like that. That next door site, like where you can pick up free stuff from your neighbors. They're just like, what are the Cubs got lying around?
I was just gonna say, I think the Mets got him because they figured, Trump had really loosened up the child labor laws.
Okay.
And they're like, wow, what about this Nick Madrigal? It's like, yeah, how old is he? 12? No, he's 28. What? He's a grown man? What? Sure, if you insist. So if Nico's not going to be the second baseman in Japan, I suppose we get John Birdie. Do you think that's probably the
John Birdie? Yeah, I would think so. Unless they get crazy and want to see Turner at third and Shaw at second. But I think it'll be probably Birdie.
Have you seen any Gage Workman in action in the spring yet?
Just a few clips,
He can't keep his helmet on. It's very annoying. It's not just the Gary Matthews, like he hits the ball and he runs and Gary used to literally knock his off.
Yes.
He'd try to make it look like it fell off, but he'd throw his arm in the air and he'd literally be knocking his. Gage loses his on just swings. Like it's like, can we get him a chin strap? Or it's like, or maybe a helmet that fits. One or the other. But I'm getting tired of watching you put your helmet back on. So try to work out. He is we knew he was tall. He's 6'4". He looks a little bit like Patrick Wisdom. Blonde,
really?
He's got the beard.
I haven't I guess I haven't picked up on it yet.
Not quite as filled out as Patrick. But probably the Cubs didn't get Patrick till he was a 46-year-old rookie or whatever. So he was a lot older. Still my favorite is him breaking the Cub rookie home run record, single season home run record, while playing with the guy whose record he broke, and he was older than Chris Bryant. at the time.
Yeah.
It's like, does this count? Can we put an asterisk on it? Shota got lit up the other day. Are we worried? Is the bloom off the Shota rose already? I'm ready to give up. I think they should trade him.
He's working on things.
Trade him to the Dodgers so we can hit against him.
Yeah.
I made fun of the Bleacher Nation guys for within one paragraph in one of their articles, they were making a huge deal out of the fact that is it Brad Keller? Is that the Keller that we have?
Yeah.
Looks amazing. Throwing 96, 97. And then Tyson Miller, the first 10 pitches he threw were balls. And like for the Keller one, apparently we're really supposed to believe that the spring outing means a lot. And for Tyson Miller, we're supposed to go, it's just spring. It doesn't matter. It's like, all right, don't put that in the same paragraph, right? Maybe spread them out a little. If you're going to try to fool us. Does it matter? Does it not matter? Don't immediately contradict yourself. I also enjoy the obligatory fly balls get dropped in spring training in Arizona.
Yeah.
And immediately, well, it's almost impossible to catch a fly ball here because there's no clouds. It's like, we know, we've seen enough spring. You don't have to say it every time. We get it. I forgot to say Sammy had a quote in the interview that I really enjoyed. He was talking about working with young players. And Sammy said, quote, I like to talk to them mentally. Is he telepathic? Is that what he's saying? He just like sits and stares at them. I mean, you think that everybody's like on the bench and Sammy is just staring at them. They're like, what is he doing? I'm talking to you mentally. Yeah. It's like, how about talk to me orally? Because the mentally, it's like, this isn't the dead zone. Actually, that was
Sammy's like a Jedi.
Well, he has to be dead to communicate with them that way, though. We don't want that to happen yet. I guess the dead zone, Christopher Walken, he could like see flashes of the future. He wasn't communicating. It's one of my favorite bits on when he was hosting Saturday Night Live. Was they had he was trivial psychic, and so
I don't think I saw that one.
He could predict things, but they were completely useless. Like he's looking at a guy and he goes, "Oh, you're going to eat an ice cream cone too fast. You're going to get a headache. It's going to hurt real hard.
That, yeah.
It's going to hurt real hard for about 15 seconds." Trivial psychic.
Did you catch a lot of the SNL 50?
I did. And there were a lot of people who couldn't understand why it was so like, there was so much like recency, but like, it was really almost like the last like 15 or 18 years and not all 50.
Yeah, and they really focused on like the Jason Sudeikis, Andy Samberg class.
And I kind of think, they did an SNL 25.
Yeah.
And they did an SNL 40. So you kind of feel like maybe you've already done the real extensive tributes for the first 25 years, for the middle 15, and now you've got... There's also some thought, though. Lorne is now 80. And they do think he's finally going to retire here in the next few years. And there is some thought that Seth Meyers is going to be the one who takes over running Saturday Night Live. And then people were really reading into it because that was like his cast.
Yeah.
The ones who were doing... Apparently, he really had he was very involved in the SNL 50. And there is some thought that was just showing his influence is already there. So
yeah, that makes some sense. I had heard Tina Fey's name thrown around too, which I think would be brilliant. But yeah, Seth is good. Another good choice.
Yeah. And then they can.
Yeah, because they were not. They both were head writers and very very good at doing the news. So
yeah.
Although I did prefer Tina.
I like Tina and Amy better than Seth and Amy. Yes.
Yeah.
As pairs.
I mean, not
but
by
I did like
huge...
Seth and Amy. They were good. Yeah. I did enjoy Bill Murray ranking the update hosts, and Brian Doyle got to be number one. Yeah. My brother.
The best skit of the night, though, was the Scared Straight with Eddie Murphy and Will Ferrell. Yeah.
Eddie was like, so Eddie for the
Eddie
SNL 40.
Yeah.
Eddie hadn't really patched up the relationship with Eddie yet. And he was there, but you could tell he just wasn't like comfortable being there. But then a few years later, he hosted. And now he's clearly just like back, and he's very comfortable. And him and Black Jeopardy doing a Tracy Morgan impression next to Tracy Morgan was amazing. Yeah, and then he swore during the Scared Straight thing. Because he was getting so into it. He dropped an F-bomb right in the middle. He was screaming.
I totally missed that.
But it was really good. Yeah,
that was really good.
It was nice to see Eddie back, and because he's probably, although he was. I was a little young when he was on, but of all the people who've ever been on it, I think he's got to be the most talented person they've ever had.
Yeah, talented. I mean, Will Ferrell's definitely up there. I'd have to think about my Mount Rushmore when it comes to SNL. It'd be tough. But Eddie. I mean, to have Eddie and Will Ferrell in the same skit, that's really great.
Eddie was.
I'm sorry.
I was going to say, Eddie was there during the Dick Ebersol years when Lauren had left. He was gone for 5 years. And
that cast was brutal.
Yes. Eddie saved the show. If Eddie wasn't on, he was 19.
They would have folded. You're right. Yes.
That show would have been off the air. But he was such a big star. He hosted while he was on the cast.
I remember that.
It pissed everybody else off. But if you look at everybody else, you got like Joe Piscopo was like the next best one. It's like, you guys don't get to be pissed. If Joe Piscopo is number 2, you don't get to be pissed that Eddie is hosting this week, even though he's on the cast. So I'm sorry I stepped on you while you were.
No, I was just going to say I had some random thoughts about watching a lot of the old SNL stuff, especially over that time span that was like a week long of specials. You know who actually I was thinking about was an underrated cast member was Chris Kattan. Because I saw a lot of some of his stuff come up recently, and I mean, just the mango thing was pretty. It still holds up. It's still pretty fun. It's how silly it was, but the Cajun lawyer, that some of that shit was pretty funny.
Yeah, I think did you see the one where they did? They have the little documentary about auditioning.
Yeah, that was great.
Kattan does mango in his audition.
Yeah.
They showed him. He's up. He's not. He's got his clothes on. He doesn't have like the Mango was basically wearing like just ripped up whatever. But he's on the table and he's like destroying the apple.
That's that Monkey Boy. Mango was where he played the exotic male dancer.
Right. Yeah, I had the wrong guy. Yes, that's right. Mango was the one.
No, that was good too.
Mango's the one Garth Brooks fell in love with when he was hosting.
Yeah,
that was like a whole running thing through the show. Was Garth had become obsessed with Mango. That's right. That was what was the guy who destroyed because that's what he did in the
Yeah, no, that was really great too. I don't remember the name of that, but I thought the Cajun lawyer was very funny too. Nobody could understand him.
I liked that they in the 50 they worked one of the creepy John Mulaney musical like odes to New York in because those are always good. So that was very good. I enjoyed it.
I know it's pretty cliche, but I do think Mulaney is one of the funniest people on earth.
Yeah. Yes, he is. I remember thinking I don't know if I'm going to watch. I'll probably just I'll record it and I can just zip through it. And I started watching right when it started, and I was just parked there for the next 3.5 hours. In fact, the local news here in Rockford, they came on I had to go back to Peacock to watch like the last 15 minutes of it because they were Drew, we're doing the news. It's like, no, it's not. The show's not over yet. I want to see it. So I fired it up on Peacock and they were still going. So I watched it. Speaking of things you can't see on Comcast. No, actually, so in the Sun-Times today, Thursday, Jeff Agrest has 2 scoops in one. One was that the Cubs are 99% sure that Comcast is going to move them from right now. If you subscribe to Comcast, Marquee Sports Network is on the most basic tier. So you just get it.
Right.
They're going to move them to their sports and entertainment tier, which you have to pay extra for.
Yeah. Did anybody say how much extra that is?
It's $20 a month, but I get it.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah.
And I don't remember that I paid 20, but I'll get it anyway. I won't even notice because it'll still be on the same channel. It'll just still work for me. In that same article though, I had to read it twice because I in my mind I did it backwards. Jeff wrote that Sinclair wants to sue Marquee to get out of their deal. I read it as the opposite. I'm like, well, yeah, screw Sinclair. Marquee's going to sue to get out of it. And I read it, no, it's the other way around. And that's because they have been very dissatisfied with how much money they've been able to wring out of Marquee, because Marquee has not been the runaway success that it was promised them. So from a practical standpoint, for the Cubs, the changing tiers is a big deal. It's a huge loss of revenue, because they think that the deal with Comcast, the current deal with Comcast, Marquee gets $4 for every Comcast subscriber. Now, when you move to the higher tier, chances are you can negotiate a slightly higher rate, but a significantly smaller number of people get that tier, and you only get paid your new rate for that many people. And it's going to be millions and millions of dollars that they no longer get from Comcast.
Yeah, I heard Cap and Gordo talking on their pod last night. I think Cap said something to the effect, teams have lost about 40% of their subscribers when they've got kicked up to that tier.
Yeah, I believe it.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah. It's more...
Goodbye, Justin Tucker.
That's right. They were they told him, and they found out, and they went down and said, do you have a lease on a place yet? Because you can let it expire on August 1st.
On the trade block.
You won't need to rent a place here in August.
Kevin Alcantara looks pretty good.
Sammy says he's going to be a star. They asked him who he liked, and that's what he said. He liked Kevin. That's his guy.
It would be nice if one of these kids ends up being a star.
Yeah. It's very.
He would be the guy. He would be. He has the highest ceiling. Yeah.
Yeah. Like the only way they're going to get one for more than a few months is to grow one of their own and have him for 7 years and then watch somebody else pay him. So that's fun. But the small market Cubs. On Tuesday, Dave Brown and I talked about the effect of Justin Ishbia bailing on the Twins to buy more of the White Sox might eventually have on the Cubs.
Mm-hmm.
Because when he inevitably becomes the majority owner of the White Sox, that'd be a guy who actually has money he's willing to spend in town. There's no reason that the Cubs should need an extra push, but I think it would be good for them to actually have to compete for their own city. That's all right. We're a pro dog podcast. I got 4 of them that are.
There's no reason for any barking right now. I think that could only be a good thing, but yeah, there's a lot of things still need to happen.
Yeah.
I fear Reinsdorf is going to probably live to 100.
I don't fear it. I'm fine with it. I enjoy him screwing up the White Sox.
I do, but I do miss actually caring about the Bulls, but I haven't in a long time.
Well, but there's the sad part of that.
Yeah.
They're not selling the Bulls.
No, the Bulls are
Michael's just going to run
the banana
forever.
stand.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, because that would be, that would be fine. I was, when we talked on Tuesday about me grieving my Uncle Paul or my Grandpa Paul. I can't remember what my fake relationship to him is. The owner of the Guardians died at 94. And my whole joke about that is just like with Virginia McCaskey dying, is that now, okay, Cleveland fans, you get some fresh blood running your team. The new owner is only 78.
Wow.
Or whatever. It's one of his kids. So unless he had a kid at 16, he's probably younger. But you never really get away from this stuff. And for Cub fans who are like, well, eventually the Ricketts are going to sell. They're going to own this team for a generation. We're saddled with them for. I shudder to think what the next generation of Rickett is like.
No,
I feel it's just a bunch of Todds, I think. But I don't think we're going to find out for a while. But yeah, so I don't know enough about how the Sinclair Marquee relationship works. My guess is what Sinclair wants is to negotiate an out with Marquee give us some money and we'll get out of your hair. And now you can get to keep 100% of the money instead of paying whatever percent they pay Sinclair.
Yeah.
So you might be able to recoup a little by getting them out of there. And I don't know what Sinclair does for them. The whole idea, I was surprised they still had that relationship, because I thought they basically just worked out a deal where Sinclair would help them get distributed and then they wouldn't need them anymore. So I was kind of surprised if 5 years later, Sinclair is still, I guess I shouldn't be. They're still sticking their hand in the cookie jar and taking money out of it. But it seemed very like Bears having to hire Bill Polian.
Yeah.
The Cubs having to work with Sinclair to get their network distributed. When we're supposedly Crane and his baseball or his business operations people are such geniuses, they can just handle this. But I guess now we'll know.
Yeah, this goes way back, and it's just so funny because like when Tom first got here, he hired the best baseball people, but he just still let Crane do all the business stuff, and Crane dropped the ball on a few things. I mean, yeah, the Wrigleyville renovation and the whole surrounding thing turned out pretty well at the end, but just the way it was kind of like handled in the beginning with the rooftop owners and then overspending on it, and the TV deal just being a couple years behind and being locked into that deal with Comcast by them. Yeah, it's just the whole, right down to like Marquee debuting during the COVID spring training.
Yeah.
It's just all of it just unraveled. Hey, do you think like in another universe, if they would have handled the TV thing better, that things, they would have continued on with the path they were on?
I'm sure they have a self-imposed ceiling on what they'll spend. But I do think if they were getting more TV money, that number would be higher.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's a revenue stream that they make the baseball operations pay for the fact that business operations can't hit their targets, because that's where the whole idea, all this BS about every penny we make goes right into the team. Well, clearly it doesn't all go into the player payroll. It doesn't go there.
No.
So I do think they probably, that's where it ends up hurting, is it ends up being taken off of Jed's, because something happened, right? Remember when I talk about this all the time, but when they signed you, Theo was literally bragging at the press conference about how they got such a great deal that now he had more money to spend next year. And then the next year he didn't have that money to spend. They had taken it back somehow, and his thing went down, not up. His projected payroll. And it was kind of nice to see. Asahadev was the one who finally said it, because we've always thought it, but basically, I guess on their podcast a couple of weeks ago, him and Mooney, he said Theo left because he was frustrated that Ricketts wasn't spending the money he had promised he was going to spend.
Oh, yeah, totally.
And that, we'd all kind of assumed that, but we finally had somebody just come out and say it. So,
yeah, I'm actually kind of almost feel like Jed had to put his tail between his legs to stay. It's almost like he wanted the job so badly that he had to stay under these circumstances, because I can't imagine going from where they were, and from 14 to 16 or 14 to 18 to that, is having a middle of the pack payroll, which, would be fine if you weren't the third largest market.
Yep. I mean, I would even be fine with it. I guess I don't know how you would do this, but to me, the biggest issue I have with the way they've handled the payroll ever since 2016, it didn't have an impact in 16, but it started having an impact in 17, was if you set you insist you're going to have to stay under the luxury tax, which I think is stupid, because the luxury tax penalties, they hide behind them. They're not, the first level is not that bad. That's fine to set that. But if you sign a contract that unexpectedly doesn't work out, like Jason Hayward, there should be some flexibility where, like, okay, we screwed this up. He's not as good as we thought. We can't let this keep us then from acquiring. We're gonna have to upgrade over him. So we got to spend some money. And they wouldn't do it. They just kept running him out there year after year. And then, people have heard me go on and on about this. And then all of a sudden you can't keep Nick Castellanos, even though he wants to stay, and you get rid of Schwarber, and then you won't go after Bryce Harper because you're already paying too much for it. It's like, because part of Theo's budget projected after 19 was that Hayward was going to leave because he was going to opt out, because he was going to be such a star that he was going to only be a Cub for 3 years. And then all of a sudden he's there because he's not a star and he knows he can't make that money in the open market. And you would think that that's where, being the big market team in a small market division, you would be like, all right, we're going to flex our muscles and we're going to extend our budget because we can't let this one bad contract hurt us competitively. But they did. And now it seems like they hide behind it. It made them afraid to go after other players because it's like, well, that never works out. It's like, well, you signed John Lester the year before and that worked. So the one you're going to hold up as the example is the one that didn't work instead of the one that did. It seems to me like you consciously made that choice, that you just want an excuse not to spend. You're not looking for a reason. You're looking for an excuse.
Yeah. And I was going to say, like, it feels like the worst thing that could have ever happened in a lot of ways is when Arizona made that World Series run a few years ago, because now Rick points to it all the time. It's like,
he does. See? You only need to win. They only won one more game than we did, and they went to the World Series. You can just
sneak into the playoffs and go to the World Series. It's like, you don't have to try to win the World Series. You just try to win the division. And yeah, I mean, the division's very winnable, and that should be their first goal every year. But yeah, you still, I mean, come on, they don't really measure up very well against the Dodgers. I still worry about them being better than the Brewers.
Yep, so do I. They were 10 games behind him last year. That's a lot of games to make up.
And, Churio's only going to get better. Yeah. Contreras is one of the best young players in the National League. They've lost a lot of pitching. But, they usually find a way.
Yeah, but they were smart enough to let Colin Ray sign with the Cubs.
Yeah.
So they have somebody they can beat up on. Yeah, I do like the fact Craig... I just call him Craig because we're close personal friends. Yeah. Craig Counsell is like, his goal clearly is for them to have home field, to be the second best. Everybody, just the Dodgers are going to have the best record. And don't worry about it. He wants them to have the second best record. He wants that. He wants a bye. And he talks about it like that's their goal. This is not the, we just want to make the playoffs and see what happens. Craig's like, we want to make the playoffs and we want to not have to play that for the first 3 days.
Yeah.
Which is the right, that should be every non-Dodgers team goal this year should be that. And it's not. There's very few teams. Yeah. That's the goal of the Braves and the Phillies and the Mets. But that's not the goal of the Cubs, really. It's the goal of their manager. But clearly, looking at their roster, that's not the goal of their front office.
Yeah, Craig hasn't been here long enough.
I guess he needs to get a beat out of him a little more.
Give him till like next year, and he'll be like, all right, I'm on board with just winning this division shit. Because
they are 100% on the exactly what you said. Get in the playoffs and get hot. See what happens.
Yeah.
I mean, they probably look at what the Mets did last year as like a rousing success. They got in the playoffs on the last day, beat the Brewers, who'd they beat? Phillies? Yes. And you went to the NLCS, and then they got beat by the Dodgers. And the Cubs' goal should not be to look at that and be like, see, that was cool. Let's do that. Like, no, we don't. You're not supposed to stop at the NLCS. Your goal is not supposed to be to make the NLCS and lose. But I have a feeling if you offered that to Tom right now, he'd take it because there's home playoff games. You got a few home playoff games, so yeah. We'll see. Other TV news that happened. I think it happened while I was. So last Thursday, it happened last Thursday because I was doing this. I was babbling by myself for an hour, and I talked a little bit about how sometime in March, ESPN and Major League Baseball were going to decide whether to break up or not, and it happened while I was talking. I literally stopped recording and went, "Oh, well." I talked about that for 10 minutes as though I didn't know if it was going to happen or not. I said, at least I was sure that it was going to happen. Boog was on the Score today. He's an ESPN employee.
Yeah.
And he was saying that baseball screwed up because they put that opt-out in that contract. And he said, otherwise, we'd get that, Major League Baseball would get that $550 million still be on ESPN. It's like, I don't think baseball just put that in the contract, Boo. I think ESPN wanted that in the contract. They wanted to be able to decide, and baseball agreed to it. ESPN had already cut, the deal they had before this was for $750 million, and they cut it to $550. They already went down $200 million. And now they're just going to be out after this year. Boog very optimistic that they could work out a lesser deal, which I don't think either side wants to do. So I think he's 100% wrong. But it does make you wonder where they go. I don't like Sunday Night Baseball. I don't like it, I think, for the dumbest reason, which was for those 4 years I wrote for The Athletic, and my column was due Sunday night. And when the Cubs were in it, I had to wait. I could write most of it, but I had to be willing to rewrite part of it if something happened on Sunday night. But then especially when they moved it up an hour and it's like Sunday late afternoon instead of Sunday night, it just didn't feel like a big deal. I guess the reason it's a big deal is it's the only single game of the week. Even when Fox does their Saturday games, there's 3 or 4 games. They're showing 3 games, and then all other teams are playing 2. So Sunday's supposed to be special because it's the one game. But I think it had lost its luster a long time ago.
Yeah.
I mean, I could barely tolerate it when Joe Morgan was on it, babbling about walks are bad. And he's still amazing to me. The guy who, the player, who the things he valued in a player as an announcer. Like, he wouldn't have liked himself as a player because all the things he bitched about was things he was really good at, things that made him extra valuable. He walked a lot.
Yeah.
It's like, what are you talking about? So I guess what has baseball got to replace? They have a game of the week. They have the home run derby, and then they have the first round of the playoffs. That's what they've got to sell.
Yeah.
And I don't know, who do we think? Is it as simple as they go to TBS and they go to Fox and they're like, all right, what do you give us? Does one of you want to show the home run derby? And do you guys want to split up the wild card round? And Turner, do you want to do a game on Sunday? I mean, I don't know who else there is out there.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if even MLB Network makes the most sense to like mix some of that in there, or
but they don't want
streaming services.
Like,
no,
they
I
don't
know. I'm just thinking
because they can't sell it to themselves.
Yeah,
they want to sell it to somebody else.
But I don't think everybody has MLB Network, so I don't know. I mean, they need to do something anyway with some of these games that not everybody can see. So I feel like maybe they up the subscription price to MLB Network and carry some games, and at the same time carry maybe a few marquee things like that, where they can make it more attractive, put it into some kind of package, or like Apple TV. They seem to have done pretty decent job with the baseball at the Saturday game. We'll see. I don't know. Or was it Friday
Apple TV
night?
does it Friday night. Those games look cool. Like,
yeah, it is. It looks different.
I love
right.
they have the best. They have the most simple but the best graphics. They look really nice. But apparently nobody watches them.
Yeah. Okay.
like baseball won't tell you what the viewership is for a reason. And then it's funny. They seem to really piss ESPN off when they sold the game to Roku for like $50 million or whatever. And, or maybe it was even less than that. It might have been $10 million for a year. But it's like, that's a game they started at like 11 o'clock in the morning. There's no blackout window. It's like, I don't think that has any impact on it. But ESPN apparently was like, look, you're giving us, we're paying $540 million more dollars than they are. It's like, yeah, you have a lot better content and a lot more of it. Baseball apparently is still mad at ESPN for like getting rid of Baseball Tonight, and they didn't feel like they were being covered like for a rights, like a rights holder partner, that they didn't get covered the way they thought they should. But I just ask a hockey fan what happens when ESPN doesn't air games of your sport, how little attention that they then pay to your sport.
Yeah.
I mean, in a year, ESPN might, or baseball might be like, God, I wish we at least had a game or two on ESPN, because they basically pretend like we don't exist now. So that could be a problem.
Yeah, I just wonder, like in the days of streaming, though, how does ESPN still hold the same kind of weight though that they did? You know what
I mean, it's not like if they don't show your highlights on SportsCenter, nobody cares. Nobody watches SportsCenter anymore.
Yeah, everybody sees highlights everywhere else now.
Yeah, maybe it doesn't matter because ESPN had basically already stopped doing all the other stuff.
Yeah.
You know, like what's the value of for the NFL being a partner with ESPN is ESPN never shuts up about the NFL.
Nobody does.
Andrew Cieslak used to have this thing where he would like randomly turn on Get Up in the summer, and he would like tweet out, it's like, I'm about to turn on Get Up for a second. Do we think Mike Greenberg will be talking about the Cowboys? And it always, every time he turned on, they were talking about football in the middle of the summer with baseball games going on.
Totally.
80% of every ESPN show was about the NFL. So maybe it doesn't matter, but I kind of wonder if maybe Turner will, because they lost the NBA. They do have a bunch of other sports, including some baseball.
Yeah.
And they do that, like, I don't even know what night, like Tuesday, I think there's a TBS game that I always forget they have. Like, I could literally go a whole season and never turn that on because I don't even know what's there. But I also get the MLB package, so I don't need it. Like, I can
There's just so many other ways to get a game now. Those national televised games when we were kids, they were such a big deal because you're able to see the rest of the league that you normally wouldn't see.
So I kind of wonder if you're Rob Manfred or Tobe Manfred, whatever Bruce Levine thinks his name is. That's my favorite typo of all time is Commissioner Tobe Manfred. Oh, you're so close, Bruce. Is this an opportunity now? You'll have the owners pissed that ESPN is backed out, and it's a lot of money they're not going to get now. Does this become the thing he can use to get the last few holdouts to say, all right, we need to get rid of the blackouts for good. We need to sell a package where a fan, no matter where you live, you can watch every single game. And that's how we can help recoup some of this revenue by making it super easy for our fans. You can live in Des Moines and be, the fan of any team in the league and know that you can watch their game that night.
Right. That's what I was getting at a few minutes ago.
Oh, okay. That's
what MLB needs to do. They need to do something different with this whole, TV deal.
I mean, the reason that they have the blackouts were the reason that they were getting until the regional sports network thing blew up.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they got so much money. It was valuable to those regional sports things because they could black out all the other teams. And so if you had the rights to the Cardinals in that part of the country, you knew they were going to watch the Cardinals. So you would pay the $75 million a year that they promised the Cardinals that they have never been able to pay them, which really breaks my heart. But that's why they were able to do it. And it's ironic that the team that has by far the best TV deal, the Dodgers, Time Warner has still never been able to, it's not distributed through the entire, LA area. There are huge parts of LA that can't get their network. But the money is guaranteed. So they just keep getting it. So in one way, they have a terrible TV deal in that huge parts of their own fan base can't watch the games. But on the other hand, they have the best deal because they get so much money. That's that'll work. That's fine. I just love that being a sports fan in 2025 means you have to have a minor in economics. Try to figure out all the bullshit being spewed at you by your owner about why he can't spend. You have to be able to figure out how much of it is made up.
Yeah, they've even ruined. Yeah, even bloggers have to talk about finances all the time.
Yeah,
it's horrible. I mean, yeah, they're what did I hear the other day? They're ranked 14th in payroll. Sounds like this year.
It's embarrassing. And
that's really sad. Yeah.
And they're like, well, we can't spend more because we're right under the luxury tax and blah, blah, blah. So, well, I don't know. 13 other teams seem to have figured it out. You guys can't figure that out?
I mean,
a
lot of things would be forgiven. I think if they were to extend Tucker, mid-season or, able to make a couple big additions, but I don't see that happening. So we'll see. Hope I'm wrong.
Vlad Guerrero is, whether he leaves the Blue Jays or not, he's going all the way to free agency now. He's going to be on the open market for teams to bid on it. And Ken Rosenthal wrote, and I had to look at it twice. I said, well, obviously he'll be able to command a 14-year contract. It's like, holy shit. And he's 20. Yes, he's 27. It seems like that's the magic number, right? You have to sign the guy to 41. That apparently right now is what you have to do with the superstar. So for all the people out there, maybe the Cubs can maybe if they can't get Tucker, they can get Vlad Guerrero. It's I guarantee you that is not going to happen. They'd pass out before they had to offer that. I mean, I think they probably would have to go 8 and 50 to get Tucker, $400 million for 8 years. That's the baseline of money in years. He was going to want more than that. There's no way they're going to go for 14 years for anybody.
No. So. I mean, some of that usually is to spread the AAV out a little bit, right? I mean, so you could.
That's exactly why.
Yeah, you could shorten it up if you really want to blow them away, but yeah, that's not going to happen either.
And they're weird, now their stance that they won't do deferrals. Oh, we won't do that. Right. Why would you use a proven tool to actually mitigate your risk and get the player you want? No, much better to just... It's almost like they don't want to do it because they're worried the player will actually say yes. We could defer this money. Okay, we'll do that. What? No. Are you sure? Are you sure you want to say yes? We wanted to come in second. We didn't want you to actually say yes. We wanted to be able to tell the fans how close we got and that we just couldn't do it. And we wanted our friendly bloggers to be like, well, at actual current value, their offer was actually more than what the player took. It's okay. I never understand that. The Cubs offer to Shohei was supposedly worth more money because they didn't have any deferrals in it. I'm pretty sure Shohei's getting $700 million.
Yeah,
he's
one
getting
way or the other.
Money. It's going to take a while, but he doesn't care. He was the one who suggested the structure of the deal. So you don't get to take a victory lap for finishing. We offered more money, and then they were trying to do with the deferrals the Red Sox put in. Jed wasn't even making that argument, but there were apologists for him that were making the argument that their deal was actually better than the one Bregman signed. No, I'm pretty sure he's going to get, if he doesn't opt out, he's going to get $40 million a year for the 3 years he plays there. Whether it takes him 10 years to get it or 3, he still gets the money. So that seems
I'm pretty sure Jed would have got him if it was up to him only.
I think so too. I think I base this on nothing other than the fact that Bregman had to change positions, although they're still trying to hash that out with Rafael Devers. I'm almost certain the way Boris works was when they basically came to the structure agreement with Boston, Boris would have gone back to the Cubs and said, can you do this?
Mm-hmm.
And they said no.
Yeah.
Because I think they would have got him.
And then there was this talk that Theo had something to do with it.
Theo's helped Breslow structure the contract because he's a part owner of the Red Sox now.
Yeah.
Talk about a sweetheart deal there. He got the Michael Jordan deal where he gets to be part owner. He didn't have to put any money in.
Damn.
They gave him a percentage of the team. Just consult.
I would too. He's one of the smartest baseball guys ever.
Yeah.
I miss him dearly.
But I think it's fine that he's Jed is trying to work on a contract at the same time that Theo is. I'm sure the Cubs will come out on top of that every time.
Yeah.
Jed outwitting his mentor, and surely will. Have you caught any of the underwear Olympics in Indianapolis?
No, just a few reports here and there. It's not as exciting as last year, obviously.
Who did Ian Rappaport got in a fight in the Starbucks?
Yeah.
I forget with who.
Yeah, I forgot the guy's name, but
Somebody from Fox.
Jordan Schultz or something like that.
Jordan
Schultz.
Yeah, well, that's right. The irony with them getting in a fight in Starbucks is Jordan Schultz. His dad is Howard, the guy who owns Starbucks. Yeah, so he had home field advantage in the fight against Rappaport.
He was trying to get some pub for a Starbucks. They need some.
I don't know what they were fighting over, but
they were fighting apparently over credibility because they both had differing reports on whether Stafford
met with Brady
was looking to make a trade. Yeah.
Oh boy, I did think it was funny. So I was listening to the Hogan Johns podcast today, and they were talking about the fight. And Hogan's like, yeah, we haven't had a Chicago sports media fight in a long time. It's been like 10 years. And I'm thinking, Adam, didn't Olin Kreutz throw you into a locker and get fired from Chuggo? Did you forget that one? The one you were in? I guess it wasn't a fight. You just got tossed. But it was the irony. Good ones.
Who did Kendall Gill almost beat down?
Oh, Tim Doyle.
There you go.
Who everybody would like to punch, I think.
Yeah, that was... I think he would get off easy on that one.
Yeah. I don't know if that was more recent than 10 years ago. I think they were thinking of Bear beat writer fights. So if the Bears had all their eggs, although very expensive, all their eggs in the Trey Smith basket, that basket is now closed. The Chiefs have decided
eggs are expensive.
They're going to give him $24 million guaranteed for next year, at least. They've put the franchise tag on him. They'll try to sign him to a longer deal, but he will not be on the open market, which means the guy everybody says is the best offensive lineman in the free agent class is now not in the free agent class. So that ruins the whole Bear offseason. Now they probably shouldn't bother. That was the only thing. That was our move. We can't do it. What's Mark Bortz up to these days? We need a guard.
No, there's
anybody out there now that interests you at guard? Who's your fallback?
Yeah, my one of my favorite football guys, Robert Mays, was on with Waddle and Silva yesterday, and he actually made the case against signing
Trey.
Why am I drawing my blank? Yeah, Trey, because he said, with how much money he'll take up on your roster and all the things they have to do, it's like he felt like they could. God, who's the second guy that we mentioned earlier?
Will Freeze.
Yeah, Will Freeze. He liked the idea of going after Freeze and spending more money on the defensive line, and I can't really argue with that. I mean, you're still talking about interior linemen paying them that kind of money. I think they're still going to be in pretty good shape. Although he also did have some reservations about Dahlman. I know everybody's been penciling him in at center, but he said he's a center that's centric in zone run schemes. And he said that Ben Johnson likes to run a lot of different multiple schemes when it comes to running games. So he thinks he'd probably want to find somebody that is a little bigger.
Yeah, Drew Dahlman is the center for the Falcons, and that was the Coleman Shelton problem. Was he too small and
a little undersized,
around, get tossed into Caleb's lap occasionally?
Yeah. We need.
In one case,
Coleman
fixed the snaps that were rolling back or flying over Justin's head. Caleb didn't have to worry about that. But he was the one that was rolling back at him and being thrown over his head instead of the ball because he was having a hard time. And that was the reason the Rams had moved on from him, was they wanted a bigger center. That's why Coleman was a free agent last year. He'd started for him for 2 years and done okay, but apparently, you kind of have to scheme around your little center, and they didn't want to have to do that. It's hard to run inside when you're trying to hide the center. So. But on this NFL Network or NFL.com list of, they ranked the free agents, and they had Trey was second, the only free agent better than him, T. Higgins. And then Dahlman, I think, is 14. Did I just scroll back? Yeah, Dahlman's 14. Freeze is 19. And Justin Fields, 21. We beefed Justin up, have him play guard. That might work. But I was going to look real quick at where there he is, number 31. Would you be interested in the I think he's the 4th ranked guard. Maybe he's the 3rd ranked guard on the list. Tevin Jenkins. Would you be interested in him?
If the guy could stay on the field, I would be.
Yeah. And if you think the Bears were like, well, yeah, they'll probably still bring him back. They would have already re-signed him. You would not have let him, if you wanted him, you would not have let him get to free agency where he will now cost more.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that. Plus, I feel like Johnson's going to have a lot of say in how they're going to attack this offseason. So
it was a rare game where where play didn't stop because Tevin was on his face on the on the ground. Oh, he's hurt again.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I give him credit. Last year, he kept coming back in, but he also kept being carried off the field. So maybe it's time to move on from Tevin. But remember, there was the whole saga around that, right? Like a lot of teams couldn't believe the Bears drafted him as high as they did, not because they didn't think he was good, but because he had a back injury in college at Oklahoma State, and then he immediately had a back injury for the Bears.
Yeah, the health was always the biggest issue with him.
Yeah, and it's like, who could have seen it coming? Who knew that a guy that got hurt in college was going to get hurt in the pros? I had no idea. But yeah, the combine is nothing really happens there anymore. Nobody throws. Only a few people run. It's basically, and a lot of teams don't send that many scouts because they're like, there's nothing to scout, right? Like, guys run the 40. Like, we can read a printout. So they send front office guys because they still like to do the interviews and they like to see the players in person, but they focus a lot more on sending guys to the pro days at the colleges than they do to the combine, just because that's where the more valuable stuff actually happens. That's where you actually see it. I forget who was talking about what coach was so impressed. It's a guy who's not coaching anymore, which makes sense. Sam Darnold's pro day, it apparently poured. It was just pouring rain. And there was one coach there who just couldn't believe that Sam actually threw in that weather. And he was so impressed. It's like, well, he didn't throw at the combine. He kind of had to throw now, right? Like, he waited just to do this. I'll just throw at my pro day. And he probably gets up and goes, oh, shit. Well, I guess I got to throw in the wet. And now there's this new thing there's this new trend in college where teams aren't having spring games. It's like Nebraska started it. Matt Rule said, we're not going to have a spring game. Because last year, after the spring game, he lost a bunch of his players transferred. They hopped in the transfer portal and they left. And he thinks they basically used the spring game as like a showcase for other universities to be like, hey, that guy's pretty good. We'll take him. So now there's like 4 or 5 major schools who are like, we're not doing the spring game. We don't want them stealing. I can tell you, as somebody who went to a couple of Notre Dame spring games with my dad, you're not missing much.
I was going to say,
spring game. It's not a lot happens. The work has already been done before the spring game starts. That's that's just
you have to be a real sicko.
Yeah, to get anything out of it. I did after college. I dated a girl who went to Nebraska, and her family still lived in Lincoln. And it is to me, it's a big deal though that Nebraska canceled the spring game. They sell the spring game out.
Wow.
Yeah. 70-some thousand people go to. I mean, it's Nebraska. They had nothing else to do in April. Let's go to the spring game.
Yeah,
she was like, "Do you want to go? Nebraska. We're going to. Do you want to go to the spring game? We'd have to get." She's asking me this in like October. I'm like, "What, in April?" She's like, "Yeah, we'd have to get tickets now because it sells out." I'm like, "Oh, for Christ's sakes! Why are you guys selling out the spring game? There's got to be something else to do there." Apparently not. But NFL free agency starts in like 10 days.
That's exciting.
Yeah, it will be interesting because like the Bears, what I would like to see the Bears do is get enough done in free agency to leave themselves the option that if some player drops to them at 10 unexpectedly, that they can take it. That they're not like, well, we've got to use we need offensive line. We still need 2 offensive linemen and a defensive tackle. And so our first 3 picks are going to have to be that.
Right.
One of the secrets about the Eagles' success has been that once Howie Roseman basically got his roster in order, now the Ravens did this for years too. When you have a basic core of your roster that you can count on draft day, you can sit there, and if there's a player like a really good player tumbling down the draft order, you can just take him.
Like
Jalen you don't Carter? Have to be like, exactly. They actually they traded up to the Bears to get Jalen Carter. But that's a perfect example. And the other thing, there was other stuff that went into the Jalen Carter thing, right? I mean, he'd had the whole killed the guy in the race or whatever happened. But they already had a crap load of Georgia defensive guys on their team.
Mm-hmm.
So like, they'll just take care of Jalen. We don't have to worry about him. Yeah. But that really was the thing. Like Poles, I think, thought we have to get a good player out of this draft. We have to get one, and we need linemen so bad. We're just going to take Darnell. We can't take the risk on Carter. What you want to see them is in a couple of years get their roster to shape that they're the opposite. They're the team that if a guy is fall sliding, that they can either sit there and get him or they can jump up and grab him. I mean, he's not going to fall this far, but like Abdul Carter, the defensive end from Penn State, has like a stress fracture in his foot.
Yeah.
And he's not going to fall to 10, but what if he did? What if all of a sudden other teams like, I don't like that foot, I don't know, whatever. And you get this guy who probably should be the first pick in the draft. You want to at least feel like you could do it.
Yeah.
Right.
And I don't have any information on him, but at the same time, if my people told me he's worth the risk, I would trade up to maybe even 6 to get him, or 5.
Yeah. So they have 3 of the top 41 picks, right? I think 10, 39, and 41. And it could very well be that they could trade back from 10. I think somebody was talking about maybe the dream scenario, right, is that Shadur Sanders is still there and some team is like, all right, we're going to trade up and get him, and the Bears can move back to like 16 or 17 and pick up another second rounder or pick up it's a quarterback. You can really hold him hostage and try to get one out of him next year. And probably still get basically the same. If you're going to go offensive lineman in that first round, you probably could get the equivalent to what you were going to pick. You might even get the same guy and get extra stuff. That would be good too. So,
yeah, because the word on this draft is that there's only really like 2 or 3 blue chippers like in the first 10 picks, and then it's not that it's not talented, but it's just very equally looked at, compared to maybe the top 50 players. Like after those 3 guys go, you can get somebody at 45 that you would probably be just excited about at 15. So. Yeah, I think a trade down would be great but again, yeah, I think if a guy, a defensive lineman or an offensive lineman is there, like close enough where they could trade up and get him without going crazy, I think they should do it.
Yeah, they just need more good players. So
yeah, well, and I think that the roster is fairly talented, and I do believe Johnson when he says that, but they're just missing a couple difference makers on the lines. So that's why I'm saying if the right guy is there to trade up for, I would do that, but otherwise I'm trading down.
I talked about this, I think, on a podcast that when I think Waddle and Sylvie maybe were talking to TJ Lang. He was the offensive lineman, played for the Packers and the Lions, and now he works for like the Lions radio network.
Okay.
He was saying that when the Lions played the Bears both times last year, he was talking to coaches about, talking defensive coaches about the Bears offensive line. The Lions coaches were like, we don't understand why they're this bad. Like, talent-wise, they should have an average line. Like, the players they have, you should be able to, like, and they basically blamed it on the scheme. The way they tried to block things. He's like, none of this makes sense. And so they may not, with a better scheme, it may be, certainly they still need to upgrade at those 3 spots, but that overall they might not be as bad as they were if they had been better coached.
I buy that. Yeah.
Because that was their thing. Basically, what he told him was, he said, Ben Johnson been coaching the Bears last year. That line would not have given up nearly as many sacks as it gave up. And it wouldn't have been because they wouldn't have thrown as much. It's because they would have actually run plays they could block. And, but we'll see. They're not bringing back, they may bring Pryor back to be like a swing tackle, which is what he was supposed to be last year. They kind of pressed into service. But they're not bringing Shelton back. They're not bringing Tevin back. So they're going to have 2 new guards and a new center. And nobody's going to, disagree with that.
Right.
But it may not, I guess the thing is, it may not be as hard to fill these as we think it is. It may be that,
especially in the interior, it's not usually as hard as finding tackles.
Yeah. The Hogue was, one of the things he was lamenting, though, was this is not apparently a very good center draft. And last year it was. And there were still like guys who were going to be starting centers in the NFL for the next several years who were there in the 3rd round when the Bears took Amagaji. And he's like, center was a huge need last year. Why wouldn't you have addressed it? And now you'd have a 2nd-year center. You wouldn't have, but they reached for the guy from Yale with the injury in the 3rd round instead. And it may end up that, 2 years from now, you'd be like, well, he's good. So, yeah, that's why they did it. But
yeah,
early returns were not promising. I also, it was really frustrating to me the way, so Amagaji had to play left tackle in the game in Minnesota. He started. And they didn't do anything to give him help. And it was a turnstile. And they're like, we'll see, he's not any good. Well, I don't think the plan was for him to be starting when they drafted him, for him to start as a rookie. And when you have to play him, you have to accommodate for the fact that your left tackle isn't going to be able to handle the guy he's got. You're just going to have to figure out a way to help him out, and they just didn't seem to want to do it. And I don't know. I will say it's nice having a head coach, even though he's been for 6 weeks. That when you see him interviewed, you're not like cringing at what his answers might be. That was always the feeling with the Flus was, oh God, Matt, just don't say something stupid. You're not worried about it with Ben. Like he clearly has his thoughts together on things. He knows what he wants and he knows what he wants to say.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but he reminds me of Counsell a little bit. Just like in the same, like they really have a really good understanding, of the sport and what they're trying to do. And it's, he's one of the smartest guys in the room.
Yeah.
Which Eberflus, not so much. He's like Fred Flintstone.
There's not enough acronyms. We need one, right? We lost, I missed the HITS principle. Okay, you got to come up with something. Come on.
We knew from jump. We knew that when that press conference hit, we knew we were fucked. I just figured, hey, you know what? Dumber coaches have won in this league.
Exactly what I was thinking. It's like he doesn't have to wow us. He has to wow them. Well, he didn't wow anybody, as it turned out. That was the problem.
Yeah.
But he's back doing what he was born to do. He's a defensive coordinator again.
God bless him. It's
what he should have always been.
He's lucky he's got that. Yep. Yeah, and that's just.
And Johnson is basically
defensive coordinators.
Johnson has basically said, without saying, he's not going to come out and 100% confirm it. If the Bears had fired Eberflus last year, Ben he would have wanted the Bears job.
I believe that.
He would have come. This would be year 2. So he would have worked with Caleb, and he would have wanted Caleb.
Yeah.
That apparently was part of why the whole thing blew up in Washington. Was the quarterback that he wanted was Caleb, and they weren't going to be able to get him. And he's like, well, I don't know about that situation. I'll wait. And he may have been smart enough to go, I'll just wait for the Bear job to come open in a year. We just played them twice. That job's going to be open. Believe me, I'll just do it next year. But I do think it was Washington ended up doing a great job.
Yeah.
Fixing things. But I think it's easy to forget what a mess that was at that time. And it wasn't their fault. None of the people who are there now had created the mess. But Snyder had just sold the team. And everything was like, that was a really uncertain, nobody knew how that was going to work. And so the idea now, you look back and like, why wouldn't he take in that job? Look at that team. He'd have Jaden Daniels and he'd have all this stuff. That was a really uncertain, there's a reason, and Dan Quinn did a great job. There's a reason they ended up with Dan Quinn. Because the other supposedly more attractive coaches were like, let them sort that crap out. That might be a good job 3 years from now, but we're all going to wait. And
yeah, I agree.
But I do think that ended up helping the Bears.
Yeah.
The
Commanders'
dysfunction ended up helping the Bears.
Yeah, we're lucky.
And then ironically, the Commanders also, they basically ended the Eberflus coaching tenure.
Yeah, they really did.
It took a little while. It was a delayed reaction, but that was the end of it. Like, he was done at the end of the season after that.
Yeah. Between that and the Lions game.
And then he ended up speeding it up. And then Ben, the irony, the Commanders, they have the Hail Mary, and then Ben is literally on the sideline watching Eberflus get himself fired on Thanksgiving. Going, I know where I'm working next year.
Yep.
All right. Well, thanks, Tom.
Yeah.
Many of us have herpes.
Post-game show is brought to you by Christ, I can't find it. The hell with it.
It's fitting. It's got to be done with one of the best games of all time. Just unbelievable. I mean, got to congratulate the Dolan family.
Sean, my podcast co-host Andy, you were his favorite player growing up.
Oh, thank you so much. Awesome.